Great. Hi, I'm Adrian Davies. I'm the IT Operations Manager at Stockport Council. And it's really interesting to be here talking at a universities and colleges IT infrastructure meeting. You know, I think there is quite a lot of similarity, probably between local authorities and educational establishments. We're sort of faced probably with the same sort of pressures. You know, we've both got staffing customers and a large other student base or citizen base that we have to support. No doubt you've got increasing pressures on your storage requirements. You've got greater opportunities to work with other partnership organisations. And no doubt there's budget pressures as well. So, you know, faced with that sort of suite of challenges, we at Stockport made some decisions around our data centre infrastructure, which I'd like to share with you. And so I'm going to talk about hyperconvergence with our Nutanix setup that we put in place with our technology partner, XMA. So, firstly, I suppose, we'll look at some of the challenges we're facing at Stockport, and I don't think it'll be any surprise as a local authority. Top of the list is budget reductions, and you know, we've already reduced our budget by £54 million. We did that up to 2014, but in the next 4 years we've got another 60 million to save. So that's a big challenge right there. And across the board we've had staffing reductions, and each department is having to take a capital and operational expenditure cut to their budgets as well. I suppose for me as an IT manager, I mean, that really sort of transforms itself into basically I'm losing skills, I'm losing staff, they're taking their skills with them, and I'm unable to refill those vacancies. So that's impacting around how we can manage, sustain and develop our data centre infrastructure. All of those things, the storage servers, applications, virtualization, you know, we're struggling with that. We have those challenges, but we can't really stand still and just deal with those challenges. We've got some government initiatives that we've got to take forward as well at the same time. And the big things for Stockport currently are we're calling health and social care integration. We're working very closely with our NHS colleagues in the area, Foundation Trust Hospitals, Clinical Commissioning Group for the GPs, and the mental health trusts. So we're bringing that together with social care in the community, the multidisciplinary teams, to give a holistic care package for our citizens. That's a really big investment by the council at the moment. And also we've got a digital by design initiative under the umbrella for digital by default from central government. And that's really changing the way we interact with our citizens, providing portals for them to access their data so they have a single view of their interactions with the council. But in the back end, making sure we've got end-to-end digital automated processes and taking the business intelligence around that so we can improve those as well. And again, that's taking a lot of investment, a lot of change and infrastructure for us to develop on that. So what do we need to achieve there? Well, I as an IT operations manager, I need to be able to provide a sort of scalable, easy to manage IT infrastructure which will underpin all of those challenges mentioned by those couple of big projects we've got. But importantly, we have to do that with reduced spend. We've got less to spend to get that done. And that's across the hardware, the software, the support, the whole package that we need in the data centre. But importantly, if we're going to meet that 60 million operational expenditure reduction in the next sort of 4 years, we're going to have to reduce operational expenditure, everything it's going to cost to run year on year for that package of infrastructure in the data centre. We've got to make that cost come down. So that's the people to run it, the power to run the stuff, the air conditioning, cooling power as well, and the space, that whole package around the data centre. We've got to bring the cost of that right down. So how did we go about doing that? And I suppose really we had a 5-year refresh cycle that was coming close to the end. So we had to think about what we're going to do. We had the opportunity to think about what we're going to do with our data centre. And I came to the realisation that if we're going to make some real difference here, we're going to have to do something different. It wasn't really going to be enough to just upgrade to the latest version of what we've got. If we want to do something different, we had to invest in a different type of technology. I suppose they're using a buzzword, the web scale technology, web scale methodology. We bought into that through our procurement process and came out with Nutanix. And I suppose, what does that mean really, web scale? It's a sort of buzzword these days, but it means a number of things. Primarily in that you've got hyperconvergence, and that's taking the old traditional silo stacks within a data center of your storage, your networking and your compute, and breaking those silos down, putting it onto some commodity tin, and running that through a software layer. So it's software defined at that point. And that simplifies and reduces the infrastructure you need. But because it's software driven as well, that gives an opportunity to really get other people involved from around IT. So we don't really have the time, the inclination, or really the staff to be dealing with LUNs and RAID groups and all that great stuff we used to do around the SAN. Can't do that anymore. So we've got an opportunity to push those dark arts of SAN skills and make them into a generalist skill that we can push across the entire team to support. So that's a really important point for us. And also, inside that web scale, there's the reduced footprint. If we're breaking those three old silos down into one, it does come in a much tighter package. And a smaller package has all sorts of benefits that fall out of that. We've been able to move into a smaller data center space, which comes with reduced costs, less air to cool, less power to run, and we've got space we can give back to the business and they can use to provide some value office space, close down an alternate rented location and bring people in. There's savings they've had around that, which is important to us for our estates. We're very much trying to condense and reduce that cost as well. And simplified management. Around about that introduction of generalists, the simplified management of this single unit rather than multiple interfaces to multiple different stacks of technology. It's a single pane of glass. It's called Prism with Nutanix, and you do all of your management, your setup, disaster recovery, your reporting, all your trending, all through that single interface. It links in with, well, in our case, we're linking in with VMware. So that's the sort of the automation we can get out of that to bring up a VM machine and just a few clicks to associate the required storage to it. So that simplified management, again, is really important to us because we just don't have that rump of legacy staff with a lot of experience and knowledge behind that. So I suppose web scale, it's sort of it's the benefits of the cloud you might anticipate you'd get from Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure. Taking those benefits and you're actually having that within your own IT enterprise space. So you've got the assurance that you're keeping and holding and managing all of that yourself. So those are some of the areas where we thought that's what we're going to need to do to meet our goals. But obviously there's some challenges, and for any big implementation, I suppose it's a change. Change is always a challenge. But it's not quite the change you might anticipate with what is quite a substantial infrastructure project. It's not a big learning curve, a steep learning curve for the staff. It's not weeks of training. It's not getting up to speed with new skills or professional services to help you along with that over a period of time with a handover. Because Nutanix really isn't like that. It's not that much of an in-depth technical deployment. The real challenge for us was the change of reusing the staff that we do have. Essentially, we've got technical staff who are basically got the backs to the customer. They're in the data center. They're dealing with the thing that they need to do to keep the lights on to develop that. But essentially, if we don't need to do that, we can turn them around and we can use them to sort of deliver value add back to the customer. So it's that sort of redefining of staffing roles. That's the challenge for IT management that we've got. And another challenge, well, justification in the council, maybe something similar in education, but obviously you've got to justify your spend. We've got to justify that to our corporate leadership team, and also peculiarly to local authorities, we've got to do that to elected members as well. So there's quite a level of scrutiny on that. And the justification we ran for that was basically that, you know, we're providing something that's going to be really scalable, it's going to be highly flexible, and we're going to be able to deliver quickly from that platform. So it's like IT as a service, and it's going to underpin those big projects that you've got coming up around social healthcare integration, digital by design, and it's going to work for that. But I suppose really what they wanted to hear was that it's going to do it cheaper. That's the big sell. And physical workloads, I suppose my challenge here is that I want 100% virtualization. I want everything on there because the benefits are great. I think we're about 98%. We're very close, but there's a rump of hardcore services and systems that we need to get on board. And I suppose that's always a challenge, talking to your customers and their suppliers to make sure that maybe their product development path is going in the right way. But with the story we've got and the services we can provide around our new Nutanix installation, that makes that sell a lot easier to the customers. So yeah, I'm hopeful, and that's my challenge, to get to 100% virtualization now. And also there's the measurable total cost of ownership. You know, there's a challenge to sort of identify all of that cost and benefit and saving in there. I mean, it's easy to understand over a long term the power savings, for example, or how much you've saved by reducing your licensing requirements. But the other benefits you're getting out of that, the speed of delivery of services to customers, the speed of data recovery, the extra value add that we can put back in because we're not maintaining and spending our time inwardly facing. All those aspects that come around that, they're a bit more difficult really to measure and put into that calculation. So, you know, it's a challenge to do that, but I think it's important to try and get as much of that in as you can. So, some of the outcomes. Well, I suppose the most obvious outcome was that we've massively reduced our footprint. Down from 9 racks to 1/2 height rack. You've all seen racks before, no doubt, but there's 3 of our ESX host racks over there on the left, running IBM x86 servers, and there's just 3 racks from our SAN there. That's our old Hitachi AMS 2500. Thank you, Tracy. She provided that. And on the right there, we've got Nutanix, and that's our live installation. It's about that big. It's 1/2 a rack. If you take your stakeholders down to have a look at that in the new data center, it's actually not overly impressive. They'd probably say, "Is that it?" It is shiny. It's got some lovely blue lights on it. It does actually look nice, but I think really the impressive bit there is that it's an 18:1 consolidation ratio. That's the impressive bit, rather than its physicality. So, other outcomes. I suppose the important one that most people are really interested in the organisation is that budget reduction. And I think it's looking like we're falling out around about 50%. We're sort of working that off reduction in licensing costs, cancellation of contracts with third parties around tape storage and disaster recovery, also reductions in power for the cooling and the powering, and we're certainly reducing our licensing costs with VMware by more than 50%. The power reductions, we've not really had long enough to actually get some real true figures out on that. But if we're looking at the draw on the UPS, for which in the old installation it was running at about 80% draw on the UPS. Currently it's running at about 30, same capacity. And previously we'd get a 20-minute lifespan if all the power went out on the UPS. Currently we're looking at 2 hours. So we're judging on that. Haven't got any hard figures, but we're thinking 50% reductions across the operational expenditure for the kit is pretty realistic. And one of the really good stories about this is the disaster recovery. That was a picture of our live installation, but we've got a secondary data center with another installation of Nutanix, and we back up to there and we snapshot to there, and that's sort of transformed our disaster recovery. And the business really liked this story. It wasn't a good situation previously. Our recovery time objective, that's the time it's going to take to bring back your first service, and that was it was 5 days minimum previously, and really that's no good for any business. You don't really want to be out of business for 5 days. But that's how it was. We'd have to ring up a man, he'd load up a truck, fill it full of blank tin, bring it up, deposit it at the site, we'd get the tapes, we'd build it from bare metal, you have to get the networking on there. Also, it was a laborious process, and we tested that every year to see if it would work. Sometimes it did, but it always took quite a long time. So that was not a good play for the business. But now we're down to 2 hours. It's a very quick process to run that up, and we can test that regularly without disruption. And the recovery point objective, and that's once if you bring your data back, how long before the disaster are you going to lose your data? What sort of period are you going to lose? And previously, because it was tape, it was always going to be minimum a day. But now we can get that down to 30 minutes if we need to. So that's really good. And as I say, we're using snapshot technology from Nutanix as well. And that's allowing us to get away from tapes, and that's transformed our backup and data recovery. And just recently we had a situation, we're putting in a large implementation of iDocs for our sort of place department, and it was a big thing, it was a big spend. They got issues through that installation, and they lost an entire SQL database. It was a big server outage. All the data was corrupt. We had to rebuild from a backup. Now, talking to my infrastructure manager, he tells me that previously, if they'd had to done that, they'd have had to rebuild the server, get SQL back on there, bring all the data back from tape. It would take him a day, somewhere into the second day, to get all that back up and live and ready for the customer. Now, he tells me that he managed to do that particular task in less than 10 minutes. And he could hardly believe that. And the customer was absolutely delighted. We got the letter back from them, the email back. We should really frame that. It's a good example of what we can do, and it's surprising. It really did surprise us. And breaking the knowledge silos as well. So 3 FTE, we basically have 3 members of staff who are skilled in the arts of the SAN. But we've lost them through voluntary redundancy and reductions in staff. We've been able to redeploy them against the business needs. And that high levels of automation, that takes away the special skills that you need to put your services in place. And another little anecdote really about that and how that actually transforms how we can use our teams on the ground. Last year we brought an apprentice. He's been with us about 1.5 years now. He's been working along with this stuff, and I asked him, how's he finding working with the Nutanix setup? He sort of described that previously, if he had to put together a virtual server with some storage for a customer, he could do that. He'd need a storage specialist with him to work out exactly how that was going to work, and it would take him half a day to put that together for the customer to get that live. So he says now with Nutanix, the way that's automated and working, he can do that on his own, and in the same time he could put 8 servers live with storage for customers. So that's how he's feeling about it, and for me that's great. He's basically an apprentice, he's a clever lad, but that shows that the generalization of skills for deployment it's across the entire team. So we're not stuck with a silo of 3 people, it's actually going out across the entire team. I suppose the last point really is that it's really quick to deploy, and the story around that one is it was really quite useful to us. Just before Christmas, our old SAN was coming to the end of life. We had some controller issues. It was causing problems for everyone. It was an absolute horrendous week we were having. And during that time, the XMA guys delivered the boxes of Nutanix kit onto the loading bay in the cardboard. And within 24 hours, it was out of the cardboard, in the rack, cabled up, powered on. And we were ready, if we wanted, to scrap our lovely migration plan and just start throwing stuff onto Nutanix because the existing SAN infrastructure was just not working. Fortunately, we managed to fix the existing stands we could go through with our lovely migration plan, but it's nice to know that it was in and ready, and we could have done something about that if we really, really needed to. Okay, well, that is it for me, but we've got time for some questions if you want to ask anything around that or clarification on any points. I'd be happy to take those questions. Okay.
I haven't got a question, I'm just enjoying watching the cars walk I think you said that you're approaching 100% virtualization, and there's a few things that are just left, a few sticky ones that are still left on physical. Could you tell us what they are and why they've been difficult?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I think the primary sticking point to that. So the question was, what are the sticking points to get to 100% virtualization, and what's left on physical at the moment? For my part, it's really around the licensing and Oracle. If I'm honest, we've got some Oracle databases that it's the licensing cost for our customers to implement to implement Oracle on a VM platform is costing a little too much to do. So there's nothing stopping us technically doing it. It's a financial decision for them, and that's the bit about, I think, getting involved in customers' roadmaps, because in the council they've got their own budgets and they can own services and systems. So I can't dictate necessarily to them what they have, but getting involved with their roadmaps and presenting them with a different way of working with different outcomes, especially around disaster recovery and data recovery. It's working with them to maybe steer away from a specific supplier who demands that they use Oracle. I mean, we're basically a Microsoft house as well, so they take a third-party support from that system supplier as well. So we would much prefer it if they move down a SQL route. But we haven't got any technical requirements for not doing that. We're keeping one DC outside virtualization as well, and currently the firewalls. But really, there's no technical reason other than licensing that we've not gone down that route.
Very interesting, Adrian. As a resident of Stockport, I'm glad to see you doing all the right stuff. Do you worry that the loss of the deep technical understanding of the server and storage could lead to problems when you have the awkward performance problems and people saying, why is it running so slow?
Yeah, I suppose with the situation, if we sort of compare the situations we had previously and the situation we had now, we were pretty much in a black box scenario. We threw data into the SAN and we didn't really quite know what was going on in there. A lot of white space, not a lot of reporting. Capacity management was an issue. We were buying trays at a time, just need another tray, another £20,000, there you go. And now we've got a lot more clarity about what's actually going on in there. So we've got a greater view of where we're going. I mean, if there are deeper technical problems, there's a direct connection from Prism back to Nutanix and XMA support. So we have support contracts with those guys as well to help us out. But I think really it's almost an inevitable consequence of where we're going that we didn't buy Nutanix so we could get rid of our technical staff. It was our technical staff were gone and we can't replace them. What are we going to do about it? And this is the best option for us that we could find to minimize the requirement for that deep technical understanding to deal with issues. It will give us much more clarity about what we've got, but also we've got a support contract. But yeah, I take the point. We are losing skills, and there's a hit to that. I suppose it's how best do we as an organisation transform our IT to best cope with that, really.
How was the migration process for you? How migrating from?
Yeah, that was surprisingly good. I think we were I think I was pretty concerned about how that's going to go. You know, we're transferring a lot of information from one old system to another. It's all of our corporate critical services. And I suppose we started down that path with a little trepidation. We had a full migration plan, communication plans with everybody, all the system owners and services. So yeah, we approached it really gingerly. We sort of fairly quickly found that actually we didn't really have to sort of overly plan it and overly communicate it. And essentially, it ended up, in a nutshell, it was pretty much high availability vMotion from one stack to the other. So it was actually seamless. You could do it during the day and they wouldn't really know about it. But we went down the communication path and we wanted to do a reboot, and so we did take a little bit of downtime. But yeah, there were no issues with that. I think the only issue that we did come across was we sort of ramping up how many can we do, how quickly can we do at a time, how many are we going to do in a day. So we start off with one, we'll do a couple, let's do 5, let's do 10, let's see what we're doing with that. And there came a point where we really hit the limit of where you want to go with that migration. So you're pushing a lot of data down the pipe, and it's all going to be landing in the cache. And it's got to then sort itself out through the different tiering within the hardware. And that's really the limiting factor to the speed that you can migrate. So we did hit that, and we got a bit of latency on there, so we just backed that down and carried on. But yeah, it was not as tricky. I mean, I saw the previous migration from our old system to the previous system to our old system. You know, and again, that was a much more involved process than we had with this. Great.
So, thanks very much to Adrian. That was really interesting.
Okay.
And we were warned it would run short, but clearly you had far more to talk about than you expected. So, it's great. Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers.